Good morning, folks, and thank you for joining us for our webinar today, Accelerating Electric Transportation with Community Choice Energy. We are the Climate Center, and that is our new name, formerly the Center for Climate Protection. And the webinar is a product of the Clean Power Exchange program of the Center for Climate Protection. My name is Woody Hastings. I'm the Energy Program Manager for the Climate Center. And Nina Turner, our Energy Program Associate, will be helping out with questions and answers near the end of the webinar. Our presenters today are Richard Schorske, Executive Director of the EV Alliance and the Zero Net Energy Alliance, and he is the CEO of the e-mobility group. And Justin Zagunis, he's the Decarbonization and Grid Innovation Analyst for Silicon Valley Clean Energy, the Community Choice Agency in Santa Clara County. Just a few housekeeping items. The webinar is being recorded, and so that will be made available to all attendees. You'll all be in listen-only mode. So what you can do is enter your questions in your control panel is a little place where you can post your questions, and you can do that at any time. And we will try to reserve the last 15 minutes or so of the webinar for your questions. So looking forward to that. We do have some handouts that are also available at your control panel. The slide decks of today's presentation, the biographies of the presenters, and I also included the CALeVIP news release from August. That was sort of the impetus for this particular webinar. The California Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program was announced back in August, and so we wanted to sort of follow up and talk a little bit about what some of the expectations are for this grant program from the California Energy Commission. I wanted to just go over, before we go to our presenters, I wanted to just do a little run through of some of the Community Choice Agency electric vehicle and electric vehicle infrastructure charging programs that are out there. We do have 19 Community Choice agencies up and running in California, and about 7 of them, at least 7 of them by our count, Nina helped compile the information of the agencies that have electric vehicle programs. So starting with MCE, California's first Community Choice Agency, they have EV charging station rebates for workplace charging and multifamily dwellings, and they also have a rebate program. Sonoma Clean Power, the Community Choice Agency in my neck of the woods where I live, ran a program, Drive EV, from 2016 to 2018 that provided incentives for electric vehicles and resulted in, I think the number was something over 1,100 electric vehicles provided, and that program has really sort of reverberated and had some, impact on expanding programs in other areas. And I was a beneficiary of that myself, got a smart charger for the electric vehicle that I drive. They are also now working on workplace charging programs. And Lancaster Choice Energy has an incentive program, and they're also working with the Antelope Valley Transit Authority on designing a special electric bus tariff. And then Silicon Valley, the CALeVIP program and their own electric vehicle infrastructure joint action plan, and we'll hear more about Silicon Valley's programs from Justin shortly. Peninsula Clean Energy, also a recipient of the CALeVIP program and their Go Electric EV incentive program. Monterey Bay Community Power has an incentive program, and San Jose Clean Energy, which is the city of San Jose's Community Choice Agency, is also a recipient of the CALeVIP grant. So with that, I am going to switch over to Richard's slides. So, and then hand off the control to you, Richard. The slide's here.
Okay, next slide. And you can just go and pull down all the items on that slide. And hello, audience. This is Richard Schorske, Executive Director of the EV Alliance and the ZNE Alliance, and really good to be here today and appreciate the opportunity to present on the CCA EV program context. Just quick background on EV Alliance. We're a 501c3 organization that was founded in 2009, focused on accelerating adoption of EVs here in California. And we do a whole variety of things, including EV plans, infrastructure projects, fleet technical assistance, and general market acceleration activities, working with utilities, local governments, and EV industry partners. So very recently, actually, literally just a few weeks ago, we completed with Justin and his team at SVCE, the Silicon Valley Clean Energy EV infrastructure project. We're assisting Lancaster Choice Energy as part of a advanced energy community initiative that's just getting going in the implementation phase. And we've, over the recent years, completed EV action plans, excuse me, in the city of San Francisco, Monterey Bay region, Central Coast, city of Richmond, Port of Long Beach, Ventura County, and overseas at the Kingdom of Jordan with some other partners, and have done a variety of best practice documents around one of the first, which was Ready, Set, Charge, California, back many years ago, the first statewide guide to EV-ready communities, and a few other companion guide books. And you can go ahead, Woody, there's a couple more items on the slide there. Another one on fast chargers and storage and EVs, and one on multi-unit development strategies in the Bay Area. Next slide. And just quickly done a variety of EV infrastructure projects focused primarily in the northern part of the state. We were instrumental with a number of partners in getting the network of EV coordinating councils defined and funded with the CEC. I'm sure many of you associated with those. And the Bay Area EV Council was another project co-launched with Rafael Reyes at Prospect Silicon Valley, now with Peninsula Clean Energy. And we're excited to have done a very large-scale ride and drive campaign with Reach Strategies and Center for Sustainable Energy that was one of the largest ever done in the state. So we're currently doing a lot with electric fleets, particularly in the public transit and school bus domains. So we'll be talking a little bit more about that in the course of the presentation. Next slide. So I wanted to just start with a really quick overview, not of everything that's going on in CCA EV world. Woody did a great job just hitting on the high level view there, but really look at kind of trend lines and what are the areas of focus that have been done over the last few years and then that are emerging over the next period of time in terms of how CCAs can really get the most bang for the buck in terms of how you deploy ratepayer and grant resources in the EV space. And I think, as everybody knows, the first tranche of EV investments by CCAs was really focused on augmenting the CVRP vehicle rebates with simple rebates, typically in the $1,000, in some cases, couple $1,000 per vehicle range, often with an adder for low income. And also, in some cases, most recently, even a eligibility for used EVs, which is, I think, a strongly emerging space as the used EV market becomes much more liquid and crowded with diverse models. And then, of course, accompanying that, EV charger rebates have been a typical program offering, and those range from usually a few $100s for a residential charger on up. Now we have CCAs doing as much as, or talking about soon to do as much as $3,500 port in some cases, which could be double that for a dual port charger. And with an emphasis often on the multi-unit, multi-family space in terms of the higher level rebates, as well as on, of course, public charging in general, whether workplace or corridor. And so those programs are starting to come online. You know, it's clear that the pros on doing both vehicle and charger rebates are simplicity, relatively speaking, with the residential customers and commercial customers, you're building on and strengthening existing relationships. And of course, they do incrementally reduce the cost barriers to EV ownership. and in combination with lots of other rebates available, you can get, a Leaf now for about $16,000. You can get a Prius plug-in for about $20,000. So these are starting to become truly affordable vehicles when you start stacking the many incentives that are available. The cons on this kind of investment is that there's a limited adoption impact per dollar. This is arguable, but I think it's common sense that if you're looking at potentially, an EV in the range of the Bolt, you're talking about a $35,000 car after incentives, and an additional $1,000 is not likely to make a big difference, even more so with a Model 3 or something in the higher end. And yet most of these rebates have been given to any model, to any income level. And in that sense, one could argue that a considerable amount of the money is frankly wasted in terms of incremental impact for those households that can afford $30,000 to $60,000 EV. So I think a lot of CCAs are taking that awareness on board and are really thinking about how do we differentiate and create a stronger incremental impact per dollar expended. And so if to the extent that we're continuing to see a lot of rebate activity on the vehicle and the charger for your residential customer, you're looking at trying to target to low-income households and trying to target to multifamily unit dwelling residents. And that's, I think, very appropriate. I think everybody's aware that there's a big differential in terms of access to charging for apartment dwellers versus homeowners, and that the barriers to entry are substantial in terms of getting a EVSE into an apartment building. So we strongly support the trend to really focusing incentives on MUDs and on low income both. In terms of just overall program areas, there's a lot of ways to tackle the multi-unit. It's a very complicated area, and what we're seeing is that there's a huge growth potential there insofar as even looking at other factors around income and propensity to buy an EV based on demographics. MUD dwellers are definitely under purchasing EVs relative to their demographic, and that's obviously a sign of just how difficult it is to get chargers into an MUD. So in terms of really potentiating overall EV deployment in the state, really all hands on deck on MUD is essential, and that absolutely extends to CCAs insofar as CCAs are sort of the latest entrant into the EV incentive world and could make quite a big difference in MUDs if we were to focus on that area. I'll just mention parenthetically that with the increased emphasis on building decarbonization / electrification of everything, MUDs can be approached with solar and storage in mind. There's some interesting approaches that integrate solar and storage with EV in the MUD context and create a more valuable sort of value proposition for the owner. And those can be further incented by various kinds of rebates, both direct from the CCAs as well as SGIP and the existing solar rebate programs. When you get into the MUD world, of course, you're looking at a lot more complexity potentially in terms of program administration. If you're just going on a metric of how many ports are deployed per dollar, it's going to be a fewer number of ports than pretty much any other area because the cost is higher relative to level 2. And TA, technical assistance, is really an important element here because, frankly, MUD owners are not well incentivized to install MUDs. There's fundamentally little to no profit in it. It's quite complex. There's a lot of management and admin issues around tenant churn and what happens when the person that was charging an EV moves out somewhere else, and what do you do with that space if there's not another EV owner that occupies that same unit. It's quite complicated. And what we have found and what Peninsula Clean Energy has done recently and SVCE is likely to do is to actually bring on board some technical assistance resources that can help particularly owners of larger MUDs where you're going to get a lot of impact with some investment potentially in EVSE deployment in those complexes to really actually provide a lot of hand-holding from someone who's experienced in working through the many issues that are involved in both the infrastructure itself, the electrical capacity upgrades, as well as the programmatic management issues around what do you do about tenant churn? What do you do about the potential for shared EVSE given dedicated spaces and so on. So this is an area where we've worked closely with a firm called EV Charging Pros, a gentleman named John Kalb, who's been quite helpful to a number of CCAs and private industry folks in solving some of those problems and put together programs with EV Charging Pros that have helped to potentiate that impact area. In terms of the trend lines there, there's a number of interesting things that are being done in MUDs. One of them is the deployment of shared electric vehicles as an amenity into MUDs. Some of you may be familiar with a company called Envoy that's doing some work in this area, really good work. They got quite a lot of CEC funding to do a lot of this in Sacramento region. Also with with some of the settlement money, the VW settlement money, they were able to lock in and do, I think, something like 100 shared EVs in apartment houses. And that program is both as a market rate program and a subsidized program for low income. So that's an interesting model where you get a lot of bang for the buck because you also get congestion relief, potentially increased access to EVs by folks who can't afford to buy or lease them. So it's a real force multiplier to invest in programs that have shared EVs along with the EVSE deployment. On the fleet side, this is another area where you're going to get, in my view, and this is just sort of basic math around emissions and dollars per ton of avoided GHG. You know, when you take a diesel bus or a diesel truck off the street, you're getting way more bang for the buck on emissions reduction than a light duty vehicle. So if the EVSE can be targeted toward diesel truck or bus replacement opportunities versus just light duty, you're going to get literally 10 times typically the GHG reduction impact than if you're just doing a straight up light duty vehicle charging station. And likewise, in terms of visibility, if you target incentives around high visibility fleets, whether they be public fleets like transit buses, municipal fleets that are out and about a lot, like parking vehicles or other high visibility municipal fleets, or emerging area would be transportation network company, rideshare vehicles. All of those have or many of them have high mileage. They all have high public exposure. And there's opportunities to do things like wrapping the vehicles or otherwise bring attention to the electric aspect. And most importantly, per vehicle, they're exposing a ton of people per vehicle to the electric drive experience. And that, well, most people on this call probably have been in electric cars. A surprising percentage of Californians have never been in an electric vehicle. And it can be quite a revelation, all the attributes, all the benign attributes of EVs. Get to be experienced, interaction with the driver and so on. It's really quite a big deal. So we strongly support the notion of CCAs getting involved in the fleet world, especially the public fleet world. And then last but not least, in terms of fleet types, school buses, as most of you know, CARB recently deployed or is in the process of deploying a few hundred electric school buses across the state, 100% money under the Prop 39 program. We anticipate some program like that will be reauthorized. And those electric school buses have really exciting potential for vehicle-to-grid operation, whereby there's a 100 kilowatt-hour battery typically in those buses, and they're only used, 4 or 5 hours, 6 hours a day at most. And they are available all the rest of the time, including weekends, most or all of the summer, as storage resources to the grid. And almost all of the e-school bus manufacturers are now promising or have delivered V2G enabled buses. To the extent it's extra cost, it's just a few $1,000s, and the economic modeling on those appears to be extremely favorable in terms of the lifetime value of the V2G as a resource to the grid. So we're involved with a company called Highland Electric Transportation that is doing this for a number of California districts in partnership with load-serving entities. Very excited about that program and hope that that can scale in part with the help of CCAs and other incentives, including the make-readies from the IOUs. So when you look at fleet world, we need scaled funding to deal with the upgrade. Typically, there's one-time, pretty substantial upgrade costs for depot electrification. Can be tens of thousands of dollars per charger. Additional costs if there's a lot of chargers being deployed, and there's one-time service drops and all the rest. So a lot of that can be paid for through the fleet programs of the IOUs, but those are getting oversubscribed, and there's definitely need for more resources regardless. So we consider that a fruitful area for CCA participation. And again, here, hands-on technical assistance is extremely important. Fleet managers are, compensated based on reliability of the fleet, and EVs is a brand new area to them. And there's a ton of questions, a ton of concerns and issues around product reliability. And frankly, they need some encouragement and support, both financial and technical, to make the leap. And so we consider having support available through the local utility, especially the CCA, being close to the customer is a huge benefit and can be a significant aid in kind of a tipping point toward adoption by larger fleets. So we set up an e-fleet accelerator program in partnership with Monterey Bay Air Pollution Control District a couple of years ago, and did a number of fleet transition plans and provided assistance that was quite helpful in getting mostly public fleets, including schools and municipalities and the like, going on their electric fleet transition. And we think that that's a good investment. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. And I'll just note on the fleet side that there's a lot of products. There's been a dearth of products in the medium and heavy duty area, and this year is going to be the tipping point. We'll see many new buses, delivery vans, across the spectrum of vehicle types. So this is a great time to get a fleet program up and running because there's finally product that matters. So I know we only have a little bit more time. I'm just going to go quickly here through some of the CCA programs that I think are really noteworthy in terms of having innovative elements. And apologies to any of folks that I missed on the innovation spectrum, but this is kind of a quick scan. So Woody already touched on Sonoma Clean Power. This EVSE and EV incentives are pretty straightforward. They are noteworthy. They did have a bump for care customers, $2K for a care customer versus $1K for used EVs, which is a very substantial incentive. I think you know that Volts are available with a V. The PHEV version is available, as low as $12,000 to $15,000 on the used market. If you get a $2K bump, that could be quite helpful. Leafs are available on the used market in the $6,000 to $8,000 range. Get a $2K bump on that, and get a $4,000 vehicle, albeit a low mileage range, but still, we're talking about some seriously affordable vehicles now on the used market. And if the utility incentives can bring that down by offering a low-income adder, that's quite a big deal. I'll mention the Grid Savvy program. This is sort of morphing, so these details may not be exact right now, but fundamentally the vision there at Sonoma Clean Power was to aggregate diverse distributed energy resources, including EVSE, storage, smart thermostats, and the like, and bid those into the wholesale market, including in DR programs, day-ahead programs, and so on. A company called Olivine has been working with them on that, and that's kind of the virtual power plant / DER aggregation model is one that is going to become increasingly relevant to CCAs going forward, and a number of other CCAs are looking at VPPs that could potentially include EV, and that's Lancaster. We're working with Lancaster Choice Energy on that construct now with Olivine. SVCE is working on a VPP construct, and so on. So we think that's an exciting trend. Next slide. Peninsula is just doing a lot. They're doing a lot of volume in terms of investment and a lot of diversity programmatically. That's exciting, and a lot of innovation. They also have an adder for low-income programs. They have a very strong, in-depth program on MUDs, again with EV charging pros that we plagiarized to some degree for our Silicon Valley Clean Energy Program Design. And they're doing fairly high-level rebates that they're looking at with the CALeVIP. They haven't, I don't think, made their determination yet, but talking about $3,000 per charger for certain types of deployments. Another really exciting thing that PCE is doing is a very extensive and robust ride and drive program, treating this really as a core program, not a kind of a nice-to-have or an add-on. And the reason why they're investing there is basically simple math again, and that is that for a cost of really not very much dollars per test drive campaign, with tracking with a company called Reach Strategies that does this nationally and is based here in Northern California, they have a lot of experience in actually tracking what happens to folks that do a test drive, and they've discovered that a typical response rate is about 12% conversion to purchasing an EV in 6 months. Well, when you do the math and look at investing in a ride and drive program versus a direct incentive, you find that the ride and drive program can be a lot more cost efficient and get you the same result. And so that's something that they are doing on a very regular basis, partnering with leading employers, civic organizations, and the like, to make those a regular part of what happens. Also, it's not a secret that a lot of dealerships don't do a great job with EVs or don't have a broad selection. At a ride and drive, you literally have most, if not all, of the EV makes available all in one place. You have typically EV drivers, existing EV drivers, serving as sort of ambassadors of the overall EV experience. Those folks are great evangelists. They're very knowledgeable about EVs, frankly, much more knowledgeable than the average salesperson at a dealer that's selling mixed EVs and ICE vehicles. So you got a lot of information exchange, a lot of opportunity to drive a lot of different models, and it's just a great force multiplier for market acceleration. PCE's got a fleet program in development, and they're just substantially investing ratepayer dollars. I understand about $8 million over roughly 4 years, matched by about $12 million in CALeVIP. And I can tell you that the CALeVIP folks who want it, which is administered by the Center for Sustainable Energy on behalf of the CEC, they are very interested in robust local match, and they're certainly looking to the load serving entities and CCAs to be partners that put substantial skin in the game. So that was a big part of both Santa Clara and San Mateo County together getting a large EVIP award, was the fact that CCAs, including SVCE and others, stepped up to the plate with a lot of ratepayer money. And finally, many of you CCAs have decarbonization as part of your core mission statement. EVs, regrettably, despite the really robust trend in increased EV sales, maybe no emissions from vehicles and transportation sector continue to increase in California. We have not turned the curve, and that's hugely problematic. So everything that we can do on transportation electrification acceleration is critical to actually meeting our AB 32 targets. Next slide. So we're just about done here, but just a quick dive into the SVCMUD program design. This isn't launched yet. This may change a bit, but in principle, the staff and board have supported this program concept. And that is one where we're really trying to, again, bang for the buck focus. So it's not a simple EV rebate, EVSE rebate, because we don't think that gets you scale. What we want to do is get scale in larger complexes so that basically we can say to tenants, this entire complex is EV ready, and thereby enabling for purchase potentially, 1,000 units of housing if it's a 1,000-unit complex, which they have plenty of in the South Bay, that kind of scale. With a shared charging approach, you can get an immediate huge impact by electrifying a few spaces for shared use and being able to say to tenants, anybody in this complex can buy an EV and at least charge on a shared use basis starting right away. That's a very cost efficient approach relative to dedicated EV charging for obvious reasons. And but there again, in order to get a program like that on the ground working effectively, there's a raft of technical and management issues that need to be addressed and business model issues. And so the proposal there is to have a fairly robust program of technical assistance. We're allocating around $200,000 for site plans, for a dozen large complexes as a prospective budget allocation. And that will hopefully result in a cost for getting 40 large properties representing about 10,000 units into the mode of being EV ready for those tenants. I think I won't go through all the slide elements here, but I'll just note that on a per port basis, we're talking about the investment can vary tremendously depending on the layout of the building and whether there's long conduit runs and so on. So we're looking at $4,500 to up to $15,000 per port. But if it's used on a shared basis, then you can divide by as many as 4 or 5 different users per that port. So it becomes quite economical. Next slide. And so this is just a kind of a quick wrap bag of things that ways in which cities and CCAs can jointly work together on EV deployment. Many cities, especially mid and large size cities, do have some awareness of their role in EV. And so there's a lot of fruitful areas of collaboration with your municipal partners. First of all, in many areas, CCAs can and are emerging as the hub for EV action, which I think is super exciting. Certainly PCE, Sonoma Clean Power, SVCE, Lancaster Choice, many others are effectively the principal catalyst for getting EV action going on multiple levels, including with their municipal partners. And organizing regionally to develop competitive proposals for EV infrastructure is essential to a winning strategy with CEC and CARB. It is a great approach to integrate multiple partners, including municipalities, educational institutions, and large employers, into a response to a competitive solicitation at the state. And CCAs are an ideal home for those kind of grants. Justin will talk about the clearinghouse concept, whereby the CCA is proposing to become sort of the hub for grants development and administration, as well as programmatic design. So we strongly encourage CCAs to take that role. Yep.
Richard, this is Woody. So we should probably try to get through these, the rest of your presentation as quickly as possible, so we have time at the end for some questions from the attendees. So if we can just, yeah, thanks.
2 minutes? Okay.
What's that?
Thanks for the heads up. 2 minutes.
Okay.
EVSE and MUDs can be paired with robust city requirements for EV readiness for new construction. 10% is CalGreen. You could do a stretch goal of 20%. The CARB recently said that by 2040, all MUDs should have at least 40% of their spaces electrified, considering the rate of electrification. So that gives you a feeling for that trend line. Integrating climate and EV messaging and recognition programs is a big idea. Many of the cities are passing climate emergency mobilization declarations of various kinds, aligned with the IPCC, 50% by 2030 reduction target, or even more aggressive. And electrifying everything, getting campaigns going with cities around that, and doing leadership recognition of companies and employers that are on board with robust EV and GHG reduction targets is, again, a cheap force multiplier that can be very important. Setting fleet electrification targets with the cities is a great idea. The Fleet Accelerator program can pair well with city activities. And then, as I mentioned before, ride and drives. Next slide. This is the last slide. And then for those that want to focus on particular issues, if you're looking at congestion as a major problem in your city, emerging micro-mobility formats like shared e-bikes and e-scooters, by the way, both of those are just huge in Europe and Asia and are beginning to percolate here, can be co-supported by CCAs, both sponsoring and infrastructure development and the like. If you're looking at emissions as a critical focus area for your CCA, the bus and truck domain is, again, where you get the biggest bang for the buck. And if you're looking at equity and trying to incorporate that in a robust way into your CCA programming, school and transit bus electrification gets you, frankly, a focus on all people as well as lower income households. MUD charging, again, that's a lower income segment. EV car share gets you into lower income segments and really effectively. And used EV purchases and incentives for that is a huge and very cost-efficient approach to getting EVs into lower income households. And finally, prioritizing taxis and TNC vehicles. I think it'd be a great program to have an adder rebate for full-time TNC drivers, of whom there are very many, and they could just present their evidence of gig economy work in the TNC segment, and you get very high mileage vehicles. They could be PHEVs or BEVs, and get a lot of exposure of people to EVs, as well as a lot of emissions reduction per incentive dollar deployed. So those are just a few suggestions, and really happy to have some discussion at the end of this call. Thanks.
Well, great. Thank you for that fantastic overview. Really appreciate it, Richard. And I will, let's see, now bring up your slides, Justin. And I guess because of our little technical glitch here, I will go ahead and advance your slides too. And just want to remind folks that you can type in your questions at any time. We will use whatever time we have left to try to get to some of your questions. So with that, go ahead, Justin, take it away.
Thanks, Woody. So I'm Justin Zagunis. I'm an analyst here at SVCE on the team that works on program research, design, development, implementation, and review. I'll try to get through my slides in about 10 minutes so we have time for questions, but be happy to chat with anyone who has additional questions. If you want to reach out to me directly, I think my contact information is at the end of this deck. So just going to go through a few different things. So go ahead with the next slide. So SVCE, we serve 13 communities within Santa Clara County. We make up all of the county except for the cities of Palo Alto, Santa Clara, and San Jose. Go ahead to the next slide. We were launched to really focus on decarbonization and really achieving deep decarbonization. Our board also really kind of focused on reinvesting locally, and given our location in Santa Clara County, really helping to make sure that innovation focuses on the challenges that we see in the decarb sector. Next slide. And so to that end, one thing that's sort of unique about SVCE is that both of our power offerings to our customers are actually carbon-free. One is completely renewable, and the other is not entirely renewable, but it is carbon-free. And so that's something that really helps us in our decarbonization message, because if you switch to our electricity supply, you are going carbon-free. Okay. So I wanted to just give kind of a quick overview of our experience in the Cali VIP project. So you can go to the next slide. So Cali VIP, as many of you may know, is a program funded by the Energy Commission. It's being implemented by the Center for Sustainable Energy. And really, they are trying to rapidly deploy additional EVSE throughout the state, both L2 and DC fast chargers, to kind of address the gaps that they see between where we are now and where we need to be to meet some of the goals set by the state in terms of EV adoption. And so, go ahead to the next slide. And so, they partner with local agencies throughout the state. They've done, I think, maybe 5 projects to date in Sacramento, I think in North Coast. There's some in Southern California. And so when we began speaking with them earlier this year, they were thinking about how to do a project in the Bay Area. And so we submitted a joint application with Peninsula Clean Energy, who is the CCA that serves all of San Mateo County, along with the two municipal utilities in Santa Clara County, so City of Palo Alto Utilities and Silicon Valley Power, as well as San Jose Clean Energy, which is the CCA serving San Jose. And so the 5 of us submitted this joint application over this 2-county area in a location where really some of the highest EV adoption in the state and in the nation. And we received sort of the award of this funding from the CEC. And so we're in the process now of kind of figuring out what the program looks like, but we'll be receiving over the 2-county area, $33 million. And we are doing a lot of matching on our end, on our 5 agencies. And so the total will be $60 million across the 2 counties. And we're looking to launch that mid-early next year. And so I'll talk a little bit later about how we are tying this sort of Cali VIP project into our own programmatic design. So next slide. So I thought I'd just share a few things that we kind of learned from going through the Cali VIP process, and if anyone on the call is considering it or has questions about it, I'd be happy to chat directly. But one big thing is that the CEC really leans heavily on their EVI Pro tool to determine which counties need additional investment. And so one thing to look at, I think, is what do they see as the need for your county? Because if they see a lot of need, then that probably improves your chances. Next slide. We also heard that they're looking, for countywide applications because that's the granularity at which their model goes to. I think it's really important to begin discussions with CSE, which is the administrator, fairly early on. And I say now, I think we began speaking with them about a year ago just to hear more about the process and get our thoughts rolling on that. I believe that they are having a workshop this year to sort of kick off the discussions. So I would encourage anyone to attend that who's interested. And then I think this is something that Richard mentioned earlier. Matching funds is something that I think really strengthens the application, and certainly that was sort of the message we received, and it's something we did, and it was successful for us. So framing your project in a way where the CEC really wants to contribute to your area so that they can unlock this additional funding source, I think it's a really, really great way to frame your interest in the program. Next slide. So now I'm going to pivot to just briefly talking about our EV infrastructure joint action plan, which we developed, I guess, over the past 6 months with support from Richard's team, the e-mobility group, also with a lot of engagement of our local community agencies, EV and EVSE companies, some large employers, and other kind of regional organizations that we have here. So, we're really excited to be moving forward with launching the programs outlined in this plan. At a high level, transportation is over half of our remaining emissions, and so it's really important that we begin tackling this sector. And kind of the premise that we operate under and that we will be pursuing these programs through is that by increasing this EV infrastructure availability and making it ubiquitous and access really easy to find, that will help lead to additional EV adoption. And I've included a pie chart here that sort of shows how our emissions break down. So next slide. So the action plan was approved by our board last month. I've given you a link there that if you want to look through it. And yeah, as I mentioned, a lot of stakeholder input. We also got customer surveys, and we kind of fed all this in and really tried to ground truth the programs that we were thinking about with the people that it would be affecting. Next slide. So for 2019, we were trying to launch 3 programs in the next, I guess, 2 months. The first is this Silicon Valley Transportation Electrification Clearinghouse, which really we're envisioning as a way to kind of get some of the key stakeholders and leaders in this space and in our region to come together, try to tackle these challenges together, share information about what they've seen, what's been successful for them, and kind of barriers that they see that we can help them address. And then I think what I'm really excited about with this one is focusing on attracting external funding. So there's a lot of state or regional funding sources that are out there that aren't always being well leveraged by organizations or entities in our communities because they just don't know about them. And so this is a way to really build that pipeline, and hopefully that will lead to some significant additional investment. Next slide. We have the Regional EV Leadership Recognition Program, which is sort of, we're viewing as a way to kind of create some buzz around organizations, big and small, sort of improving their EV infrastructure, and we'll do that by creating this pathway for them to kind of apply to this recognition program if they make a pledge to sort of work towards this EV infrastructure, and that will give them access to our technical assistance, to the peer learning from the entities in SVTech, as well as access to some of the funding sources that we're going to be trying to bring in through that clearinghouse function. Next slide. And the third program that we're trying to launch this year is what we're calling the Priority Zone DC Fast Charger Program. And this is, really we're viewing as a way to support our MUDs by installing DCFC in areas that are centrally located to, many kind of dense MUD properties. And the hope is that that will enable EV adoption, or at least make the residents feel more comfortable with owning an EV because they'll know that there is a way to quickly kind of recharge if they don't have great access at work or something like that. And so we're doing this through a competitive solicitation where we're going to designate some priority zones in our service territory, which we'll do with the help of our member agencies. And so looking forward to kind of launching that. Next slide. So for probably 2020 launch at some point, we're going to be launching 2 very technical assistance focused programs. One will be focused on MUDs. As Richard mentioned, it's going to be looking at shared spaces and shared charging, and really trying to target some of these medium density properties where there are a lot of spaces to enable that. And then a workplace charging program that's going to be focused on small and medium businesses. And then finally, we have our fleet electrification grant program, which is going to be another competitive solicitation for our assistance in fleet electrification planning and also funding. And with that one, we're going to be looking for really a variety of fleet types: light duty, medium duty, heavy duty, different kinds of fleets. And we'd like to ideally create fleet electrification plans across this kind of wide spectrum that we can then share with other similar fleets in our service territory to help them electrify their fleets as well, even if they're not running through this program. Next slide. So I have this learn more slide. I do want to mention though that all of the programs that we're running that include incentives, we are planning on, we're not really going to be running additional EV infrastructure incentives ourselves, but rather we're going to route applicants that we've given technical assistance support and we've kind of helped bring along, educate, we'll be routing them to Cali VIP. And so their applications will actually be processed through there. And so in that way, we're going to be leveraging the additional funding that the Energy Commission is providing on top of kind of what we were already going to be spending to incentivize this deployment. Okay, that's it. And I'll hand it back to Woody.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Justin, and thank you again, Richard. Let's just launch right into our Q&A section here. Nina, are you still there?
I am.
And do we have some questions? And folks, if you haven't typed in your question yet, please do. We'll try to get to them. Of course, if we, typically we don't get to all the questions, but we can. They will be collected and shared with the presenters, and they can potentially follow up with your questions. But go ahead, Nina, assuming we have some questions.
One person just wants to know a little bit more about the electrification of public transportation for people. So not necessarily just EV public charging, but anything about buses or any other systems. And that's for anyone.
This is Richard. I think folks are aware that most buses are substantially grant funded by federal and state funds, and CARB has so-called clean transportation rulemaking that they're engaged in now, whereby transit agencies will be required to go electric, and the sooner they go electric, the more incentive money per vehicle they're going to be getting from CARB, with a 2030 deadline, I believe, for 100% electric procurement from that point forward. So it pays more for local public agencies to get to get their plans for fleet electrification in motion sooner rather than later, because the per bus incentive is larger. Of course, the per bus costs are also going down a bit, but with battery improvements and the like. But that's one dynamic. And then likewise on the school bus side, right now there isn't a settled program designed for support for electric school buses beyond HVIP, but HVIP is the medium and heavy duty vehicle incentive program that's run by CalSTART on behalf of CARB, and the HVIP website has all the information, but basically they're paying for $100,000 to $200,000 out of the costs of typical school bus, which is most of the costs, and it becomes quite competitive with diesel right now with an HVIP award, which is done through the manufacturer. So as kind of a purchase incentive that's given at the time of purchase. So it's very simple to claim HVIP, but it's a first come, first serve every year, and it does typically run out. So again, fleets need to be really on top of it, or they miss the window for those funds. I'll just pause there.
Justin, did you want to chime in on that one?
No, I think Richard covered it.
Okay. Nina, other questions?
Yes. Is there any discussion or criteria that includes passenger or freight rail electrification?
There is a zero emissions freight plan that CARB has developed for the state that's very robust and includes a lot of information on rail as well as marine electrification and the establishment of so-called zero emissions for low carbon freight corridors. So that's going to be an area of very substantial investment by CARB, talking about $800 million over a couple of years for, heavy duty, medium duty electrification. There have been some grant programs already that are more technology demonstration type programs, but I would make sure that you get on the CARB, email list for all the medium and heavy duty programs, and those are very competitive. But again, regional consortia and partnerships with larger companies, and especially with the vehicle manufacturers and equipment manufacturers, is sort of the way to go to get access to those funds. And it can be, these are big ticket, high dollar programs, tens of millions of dollars in some cases for those grants for major depot electrification and the like.
Nina, others?
Okay. Is anyone looking at putting EV infrastructure at gas stations?
Not a lot is being done in this country. It's happening quite a bit in Europe, but it's not a huge trend that I've seen as yet here in California or in the U.S. at large. But that certainly could change. Shell Oil bought a major EV SE company not long ago, so the oil majors are likely to start adopting EV SE as part of their offering soon.
Yeah, I mean, this is Woody. I'll just chime in on that a little bit. I mean, maybe fast chargers make sense, but certain level 2s, I mean, you really want to plug in somewhere where you're going to be, where you want to hang around for a little while. You're either shopping or you're working or you're doing something or you're home, you know. So a gas station is not a place where you would go and sort of charge for an hour or whatever to get a 80% charge. So I think that's why we're not seeing them deployed in that way. I think workplace charging and home charging and the like is more the way the deployment is rolling out. Other questions?
I think that's it so far.
I have a question for both of you because we do have another couple minutes here. Richard, you talked about the visibility of fleets and wrapping buses and that kind of thing. And Justin, you mentioned that trying to make EV charging, public access charging ubiquitous. My broken record issue is that folks that drive EVs use PlugShare, and they know how to find where the EV charging stations are. But particularly for folks that are not, aware of EVs, and Richard, you mentioned huge numbers of people who have still never even been in an EV. As you drive around any city, you see lots of gas stations. They're very visible, but the EV charging is invisible. You just don't see them. Is there any consideration of building in the marketing for awareness and education about EVs is there any component of the CALeVIP program that provides for visibility, signage, and the like?
I'm really glad you raised that one. I'm super excited about seeing increased investment in signage myself, Woody. And again, just as you said, really for everybody else other than the EV driver. And so, there is an approved EV sign that I'm sure everybody's seen for EV chargers. But what I haven't seen is the sponsored by, like you see on the littering, the picking up, the clean up the litter signs. And I think it would be an enormous asset for either a city or a CCA or both to actually fund a program of signage. And, a sign is whatever it is, $800 a sign or something installed. And for that to actually point out all the available DC and level 2 chargers in a town and really have extensive signage pointing to those would signal to non-EV drivers that this is an EV-ready community and could be a lot of free advertising for the CCA or the city that sponsors the sign. So I think it's something worth looking at, and I think it could be built into a CALeVIP proposal and would be subject to discussion and negotiation with the program administrators. But I think it would be welcome because everybody understands that public EVSE is undersigned and undernoticed and is a great way to show communities that the EV era has arrived. So I think it's a brilliant idea.
Great. Well,
yeah,
thanks
Woody,
for that. Go ahead.
I would just add to that, Woody. Yeah. I think within Cali VIP as sort of currently structured, the focus is really just on the EV infrastructure itself. So that's sort of an interesting discussion to have potentially with the Energy Commission. But I do think that's sort of, in a way, kind of a great role for the CCAs, given our close ties to our member agencies and sort of, as Richard said, working potentially with them on kind of outside of this Cali VIP scope or kind of any programmatic scope, but how do we help their community feel like it's an EV-ready community? And I think that's really, a crucial piece and something that, that we're certainly discussing with our member agencies to support kind of how they want to move in that direction. And I think it's a good opportunity for all CCAs to do that.
Great, glad to hear that. So we do need to wrap up. Just a couple dates and reminders. The webinar will be posted at our Clean Power Exchange website, and that's the URL. The California Community Choice Association annual meeting is coming up early next month in Redondo Beach. Visit cal-cca.org if you want to register for that. The next Lean Energy Market webinar will be on November 8th at 10 a.m. and our next webinar will be on December 11th at 11 a.m. And we will follow up with what that topic is going to be. And thank you very much, everybody, for participating. Thank you, Richard and Justin, for those excellent presentations. And we'll see you next time. Thanks very much.
Thanks, all.